beautiful sunset. Whereas if you're the equator, I think you know, you've kind of got 3 minutes. The sun hits the equator, and then you've got 3 minutes, and the sun goes down, it's black. So night is approaching. They're hungry. No food, no provisions, no plan, no mass food outlets. Everyone is hungry. And Jesus, the text is really clear, Jesus tests them. It shows the sovereignty of God immediately. He knew what he wanted, but he tested them. So you give them something to eat. What should we do? You give them something to eat. And on that it echoes the disbelieving minds and the growling stomach and hopeless hearts of the disciples. You give them something to eat is a great sermon title. I've heard that many times, but that's the point of the text. That as Christians we need to learn to share. But really, as much as we should have our motives of generosity and courage, that's not what this text is really about. The hapless and the hopeless disciples, as the story unfolds, Jesus knew all along they didn't have the provision. But with the offering of this smallest boy of 5 loaves and 2 fishes, barley is underlined this text, barley loaves. And even though children were ranked really as insignificant in the first world economy, even here Jesus is lifting up, just as we do in our society, the gift of children. Jesus takes what is really nothing and makes something out of that. Makes something we can believe and receive. In the simple blessing and really the near sacramental, just as Jesus with the disciples later at the night which he betrayed, it's really the same language. He took the bread, blessed it, took the wine, blessed it. It's the same. It's really a sacrament, you see. And some of our African cultures understand that very well. That every time you take bread, you see, you're lifting it up. The bread is fractured, bread is broken. We receive. So every meal is sacramental. Maybe we should learn some more from that. But at the word of Jesus, this minimal picnic, you see, lunch, is magnified for a feast for all time, for all ages. Yes, physically, on the mountainside, a feast. But more importantly, spiritually. I thought of the most hungry I've ever been. And I have a story of mashed potatoes, and simply mashed potatoes. So when my son died, I hadn't eaten for a couple days. And mashed potatoes, you see, I still have, wow. I wonder when the most hungry. And in our society, we tend not to go without food for very long. It's a great source of fellowship and family. Maybe water would be one. I have a friend, Ted Hill. I talked to him. He gives me a call every now and again. Told him what I was preaching about. He said, I've never been that hungry, but he tells me the time he was really thirsty. He was studying engineering before he went on to be a pastor, but he was baptized here. It reminded me of October 13th, 1991, just after I came. But Ted Hill reminded me that during his year of engineering, or years, he worked at a construction company, and they were in some northern areas, so kind of like tree planting. But his job was to bring a 5-gallon pail of water on the construction site. It was a jug of water. Well, that went good for a couple of days, and people would bring their own canteens of water. But one of those hot summer days, he forgot the pail. So all the construction workers, all they had was in their containers, and by 10 o'clock they were empty. And I guess by noon, 12 o'clock, that little basin of wash water where they had for their hands, right at the toilet, the little biffy, you see? Well, that soapy water started looking pretty good. Ted was thinking the rest of the construction workers, it wasn't a big crew, I think there was 5, he said, but he was wondering if not only if they would survive the heat of the day, but was wondering if he would survive. About 2:30 in the afternoon, a vehicle came up to the construction site out in the north where it was, and it was his parents, a surprise visit. But even the greater miracle that they found him on that day on the construction site was they had 6 liters of apple juice. Ted had never been so happy to distribute the 6 liters to his friends. So it was a miracle. Always just a coincidence, I guess we could say that. It just happened. But I think Ted could see the miracle. I wonder if we do too. Sometimes we use that language of miracle and we quickly say, wow, we try to rationalize it. You know, his parents had planned to visit. It's reason, or maybe even for other miracles, we say it was magic, it was like a trick. But our God today will invite us to see the miraculous presence. I'm fascinated by miracles. We had a whole series. Barry Bergson still one of the best, I think, at doing, right from card tricks to sleight of hand. He did an amazing miracle. Remember the jar filled with water, put a little envelope on top of the jar, a big mason jar, turn it over, and whatever, adhesion, but the water doesn't flow out. It should flow out, but it doesn't. Miracle. Wow. Mystery. Wow. Magic. Wow. You can explain it, I guess you can understand enough, I suppose, physics. Things that defy my sensibilities and intelligence. I'm drawn to that, those tricks. But for us to try to relate this miracle, we probably missed the point. Today's text is about feeding 5,000. We've heard the story. This crowd that has followed Jesus to hear him speak, it's late, they're hungry, and they have to figure out a dinner plan. And in one sense, dismiss them back to their homes. Are they in danger of dying? I don't think so. It's a short walk. I mean, they should, in the cool of the day, they still make it, even if it's night, they're together, so they shouldn't have to be, in great peril of other robbers. But when Jesus says, you feed them, all of us, I think, say, seriously? You want us to pull out some magic? Mark says 8 months of wages, or 6 months of denarius wages. We couldn't do that. We don't have that resources. Even if we did, we couldn't bring it off. We couldn't get shipments or a camel or a donkey caravan. We wouldn't have it. Jesus' suggestion was not meant well. The disciples do the obvious, which you and I would probably send them home. Let's shut her down. Have a benediction. Off you go. Send them home. That's practical. And I think most of us in North America are very practical. It's unrealistic. It's impossible to feed these people. But Jesus persists. You give them something to eat. Our paychecks could not handle it. Our minds could not fathom it. Jesus got a good idea, but it's a little unrealistic. Jesus persists in his story and with Peter in that wrestling of their mind and hearts. They find this little boy, or the little boy is given to them. It's a little bit interesting in the text that it's provided. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. The impossible situation. All screaming for Jesus to recognize there is not enough food, you see. Send them home. The only real solution that you and I would have, send them away. But again, Jesus has something else in mind. He blesses the bread and fish and tells the disciples to distribute. Distribute it to all the people. There's a wonderful theme there. And we know the story. The people are all fed, all full, and the disciples gather up 12 baskets of leftovers. The impossible becoming the possible. People throughout the centuries have taken up the cause to try to explain how could this happen. Things like, people saw the little boy sharing, and what a fine example. And our hearts get moved when we see generosity. So other people brought out their lunches. Well, that's a wonderful gift to be generous. Looking for something reasonable, logical to explain what happened that day. But the gospel doesn't. You see, not only that storytelling, make sure that we know that the fact of the story is that there's a miracle recorded in all 4 Gospels. Something happened, utterly amazing. So amazing that all the Gospel writers had to report it. And in one sense, we better not report it because it's so implausible. It'd be better to leave that one on the footnotes, you see. If you want a dramatic story, read about it sometime. It's central to our faith, central to our teaching. And again, from my brother Darrell Wilson, brother in ministry, who has a brother in Pakistan as a missionary too. But Darrell tells a story, a wonderful story from one of his devotional books about a meeting he has from an African minister. This African minister, living in an apartment, serving, he was American, but serving as a call in Africa. He had a late night mission spot, and as late nights get, needed something to eat, and straight back to the apartment, spotted the McDonald's. He walked in, and as he did so, there was some homeless kids at the front door, but he knew he was hungry, and he ordered himself one of those biggie-sized neck meal.